We are the board. Prepare to be. Wait, you're watching your father's sci-fi show? Never mind. Keep doing what you're doing.
Welcome to another exciting episode of your father's sci-fi show. So let's all just geek out with old nerds, and we're going to talk about Dune, and we won't be shit talking it this time. Dune was, of course, written in, or published or came out in 1965. I first saw Dune before I read it. I saw of course, the David Lynch movie from 1984. I thought it was kind of whacked out. It was interesting though. Then when I read the book in the late 90s, I said, wait a minute, this is not exactly what happened in the movie. So, but I think he was taking some parts from Dune Messiah when he was talking about the way the guildsman looked was in that tank. That's from Dune Messiah, which is the second novel. There's some terms in Dune. There's a lot of terms in it that I thought they were all made up. And then after 9/11 happened and started learning more about Islam, I said, wait a minute, these are Arabic terms. It got me thinking, since OPEC was founded in 1960, this book came out in 65, that maybe we could replace the Fremen with the Arabs and oil with the spice. It might be a little bit of a thing about
symbolism.
Be careful who you're energy dependent on. Was my introduction to Dune. What about you, Frank?
Like you, I saw the 84 film and I realized it had to be something significant. It just gave me that sense that this was a significant piece of science fiction that I haven't read. Although that particular period of my life, I wasn't doing a lot of reading. Finally got around to reading it in the 90s and I was blown away. And then I saw the 2003 adaptation from the Sci-Fi channel. I wasn't very impressed with that.
Right.
But just like you, when I read it in June of 21, words like Sharia and Ramadan, I'm like, oh, yes, there's definitely some strong Arabic notes in here. What makes Dune different from other science fiction, it reads like scripture. I feel like I'm reading the Bible. Maybe I'll tell you a story about one of the times I was reading it later on in the video. But hands down, it's the best piece of science fiction of the 20th century. That's my opinion. But changed my mind. Scott, what do you got?
Well, I think, as usual, I'm one of the oddballs, is the fact that I have not at all read any of the books. And it may have to be one of those issues where, I'm going to have to break down and go, I need to read it. I remember the movie from the 80s. I don't even remember Sci-Fi doing one. That's probably how big of an impact that one had. But I really like the new one because I think it was a little bit better paced, if that makes sense, because when watching the first one, they were just throwing stuff. They just throw.
Because he's trying to do the whole book at once.
It did seem like he was, because I remember watching, the new one, and I was like, man, we're 2 hours into this, and they haven't even gotten out of the desert yet. What the hell? And then the movie ended, and I went, oh, maybe they're going to do more.
Yeah, they are.
But yeah, I mean, it is interesting, the parallels between, the Middle East oil, and Dune spice and the Fremen and all that. And it's interesting. Like, and I said, well, I may have to break down and like get the books and read it simply to go, okay, because inevitably always the books are better than the movies.
A lot more in-depth in things. It's funny, Frank, you mentioned this book reads like scripture, and if you read his other novels, they're almost cartoonish. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
That
This
I don't know how to explain it. It's like a different author wrote him.
Hmm.
That's when I went back and read some of his other works, I was like, this guy wrote Dune? It was weird. And another thing for Scott, it is cool that you haven't read the books. So when you saw Villeneuve's version of it,
Yeah.
you didn't have any of the book knowledge of what was going on with it. You probably have the 1984 story, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I watched the new one, is everything that I was watching, I was comparing back to the 84 one, because that's my only point of reference that I had. And it's, I mean, there's a big change in technology as far as how the story was told, but it's so far from what I've seen. It's essentially the same story. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of them, if there are any of the rest of it.
Well, they said they were going to make the second one's being made. All right, can we move along?
I wanted to make one quick point.
Okay.
You talk about OPEC. You
Mhm.
notice that there's an organization in the Dune universe called CHOAM,
Yeah.
which I consider to be an analog to OPEC.
Right.
But anyway, go on.
Yeah. Well, Herbert said that one of the reasons why he wrote it was to warn us about charismatic leaders. And he is quoted as saying, I wrote the Dune series because I had this idea that charismatic leaders ought to come with a warning label on their forehead, may be dangerous to your health. One of the most dangerous presidents we had in this century, the 20th century, was John Kennedy, because people said, yes, sir, Mr. Charismatic Leader, what do we do next? And we wound up in Vietnam. And I think probably the most valuable president of this century was Richard Nixon, because he taught us to distrust government, and he did it by example. Now, of course, I didn't know about this quote when I was reading the books for a very long time. I used to read his entire series almost every year for quite a while there. And I never really got that message in Dune itself. It's more prominent in Dune Messiah after the jihad, which kills 60 billion people.
Yeah.
Wow. But when you look back on it, I guess you can kind of see it, because Paul Atreides is sort of that Messiah kind of character, or so he's supposed to be. I don't really see it myself. I mean, I know he becomes a leader because he can take up their ways, mostly because he is genetically kind of designed by the Bene Gesserit to be that kind of person. The Kwisatz Haderach, the guy who can see the future or predetermines it. So I guess that made him charismatic. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Frank?
Well, I see him as a charismatic leader from the perspective either Moses and the 12 tribes of Israel, and Jesus and his 12 apostles, and then Paul and his 12 Fedaykin. I see it from that perspective. The Missionara Protectiva gave the Fremen these prophetic things to look for. Herbert kind of almost turns biblical prophecy into a mechanical thing.
Right.
But they are looking for the voice of the outer world, the Azana Gabe.
Yeah.
They're looking for Mohadi. He will lead us to paradise. So they're looking for a Messiah. And I see Paul a lot like Moses. Moses was reluctant to lead Israel. He's a man of faltering lips, and that stuff. But Paul grows into the role as if you keep reading.
Right.
So The only other thing I would say is Herbert's leanings might be a little bit to the left, but at least he jabbed Nixon and JFK. But still, that message still, if anything, resonates even more today
Right.
than it did
it's
in 65.
it's a good message.
It is. So it still, it holds up.
I just think
Historically.
I think it's a little too subtle though in the book. It's in the first book.
It is. I agree with that. It is.
It's a little bit more pronounced in Dune Messiah, but
Yes.
well, there
Oops,
goes
you
Well,
my-
that's good, Paul.
Yeah, I'm just,
good,
Earthquake in
Paul.
Georgia.
just
Yeah.
kicking my camera
Well-
around because it's got to be so damn close to my.
Now, from my perspective, having not read the books, having not known about that quote, not having known about that, I really, I don't get the charismatic leader. There is the whole prophecy thing. There is the whole,
Yeah,
that angle of it, which is like, okay, that this, and it's sort of a, if you will, it's a bit of a trope where someone from the outside has to come in and they're the only ones that can lead. But I don't get the sense that Paul was the, I don't know. I can agree with Frank in an aspect is he's the Messiah figure. He's the person that's like, yeah, this is falling on you. Good luck with it, buddy. But I don't really think that he came off as being in either production of it, in neither the 84 version or the most recent one. To me, he didn't come off as a charismatic person. He was just somebody doing, just somebody who was there. But I can see the concept that he would see JFK and Nixon. But then we've had other charismatic, presidents since then that,
true.
Yes, we have.
On both sides, I guess you could say.
Yes.
well, I mean, it's, I think with being president, if we're going to limit it to that, then there is an amount of ego involved in that because nobody goes,
Right.
That's
well,
right.
I want to be president, but I don't want to do all the crap.
You don't get reluctant leaders
You know.
in the presidency.
But yeah, I mean, it's, and there are, I mean, I think any political figure is going to have some sort of cult of personality
Perfect.
to
Right.
be to be successful. And then whether the person is good or evil depends on which way you lean in the political wind.
Yep. Now, you all brought up a trope of the guy from the outside coming in to save everybody, and that is a nice segue into the claim from the internet that he's a white savior.
Mm.
And my thoughts on that were not exactly. Okay, we were talking about the Fremen, and they're like incredibly badass. They really don't need anybody to save them. And then they're doing well on their own. And the Dune universe has the Sardaukar, who was supposed to be the elite troops for the Emperor's military, and they easily hand them their ass. So
Yep.
And the dudes can ride worms. Really need to be saved. But on the other hand, it's usually what they mean in the book about him being the voice from the outer world or the one that's going to lead them to paradise. Is they're talking more about the ecology of the planet, how they were setting it up to become a green planet. And he was supposed to enable that to happen at a quicker rate than centuries. So from the Freeman's point of view, he's not too much like a spiritual leader or what we would think of as a Messiah or a prophet or what things. I mean, he can't see into the future. So that aspect of it does make them worship him in a religious way, but really they want to make the planet green, although that has a detrimental effect on the worms because their water is poison to them. But from their point of view, his purpose was to make Dune green. Frank?
Yes, I agree with Scott. It is a trope. I might even go so far to say it's leftist projection generated by guilt for racism. Although I don't particularly like that word, bigotry. Let's use bigotry. It's a better word. I think there's a lot of guilty consciences out there, and that generates stories whereby the white person can completely assimilate and be considered a brother amongst some foreign body, be it American Indians or Japanese or whatever. What I think is interesting is this story kind of aligns with identity politics. You have a desert planet, so you're going to see people very much like you would see around the Saharan Rim. So that kind of solves some problems for leftist film producers. And trying to think of some good examples. Well, you got in the Bible, Moses was a Hebrew, and Pharaoh had called for them to be all executed, but Moses' mother tossed him in a basket, floated him down the river. He gets picked up by the princess of Pharaoh, and she names him Moses, drawn out of the water. And now we have this Hebrew that gets completely assimilated into Egyptian culture and becomes the voice for the Hebrew people. I see a big parallel there in Dune. I'll throw out another example. Davidge in Enemy Mine. This is a science fiction
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
example. So Davidge takes the Talmud, he learns the Drax's Bible and speaks Drax, and he raises a Drax child, which I think that points to something that Gandhi said. I'll have to look that up. And then ultimately he becomes part of the Drax people, and he has to recite the line of Cheriba with little Zamis, the child that he raised on the Drax homeworld. So it is a trope, and I honestly think it's generated by guilty conscience. That's my opinion. But Paul is a stranger in a strange land, yet he knew how to fasten his still suit desert fashion. So
Yeah.
and that's part of the prophecy. So people believed in him. And there was a little back and forth. There were two sides to it. But the Missionara Protectiva provided the Fremen people with the clues they're supposed to be looking for.
Right.
Robert.
Without that, he wouldn't have been.
I mean, Scott, what did I say, Robert? Oh, well, I get those Vance brothers mixed up.
Well, I do think the whole white messiah thing is a bit tropish, and yeah, I can see where it would draw, probably a lot of that out of the Bible. I mean, there are other shows, there are other movies, there's other genres that play off of that. Tom Cruise was in a movie where he was shipwrecked in the 1600s, and he was assimilated into Japanese society, and
that's The Last Samurai.
Yeah, The Last Samurai. And I was trying to think of it. I remember the story. I didn't remember the name of it, but I think that, again, like I said, that trope seems to recur a lot in storytelling. I mean, even if you want to specifically look at it, what was Star Wars? Oh, we went out and find a white kid in the middle of the desert, and now he's going to bring balance to the force. I mean, you could just about apply that to almost any, situation. But
it's very common. It is.
But that's what storytelling is. I mean, that's what, if you have, and it's one of the things, if I can digress just a second here, it's one of the reasons why, if you look at all the different cultures there are on this planet, every one of them has a flood story.
Yes.
So people tend to go, wow, that means that flood story isn't true because everybody has it. Wait, why can't it be true? Everybody has it because it's true, that type
oral
thing.
Tradition.
But it's it's still, it seems to be, the white Messiah thing. I don't, and then I'm sure at some point we're going to have, but even then, I mean, it's always not a hardcore Maxim. In the original version of Omega Man, Charlton Heston, they're using his blood to, cure everybody. And in the remake with Will Smith, can't think of the movie right now, but
I Am Legend.
Yeah, I Am Legend. It's a black guy. They're going to use his blood to do it, and there's in any storytelling you're going to have where somebody is, coming to save them, and if you will, with regards to the Moses thing, he wasn't the God, but he was the person that was supposed to bring everybody to do what was supposed to be done. Same thing with Paul. In Dune, he's not one of them, but he's going to help them do this. So it's an interesting. I mean, seeing how it's done in different things is always nice. It just wouldn't be as long as it doesn't become one of those, oh my God, here we go again. It's that obvious type thing, not bolted on.
Now we can talk about the movie.
I love the new movie. I love the new movie.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of them. If they're all as done as well, then I'll be quite pleased with the series. But if they're doing, if they're going to throw Frank such a huge freaking bone here, it's unreal. I apologize, Paul. If it's going to wind up like Star Wars, just fucking don't even bother.
It probably will.
Just don't bother. Just don't bother.
I was thinking of the it's off genre, but I was thinking of the Ralph Bakshi production of Lord of the Rings, and Delanu takes a big risk making a two-parter, because if the 2021 movie was a flop,
Right.
we'd be like the Lord of the Rings movie that they only made the first half and they never made the second half. They did a book and a half and they never did the other half, the middle, the second half of the second book and the third book. So, but this was such a triumph that it's already, the machine is already moving towards part two. And maybe we'll even see Dune Messiah, which could be done in one movie.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think there's. I think really that depends on who's doing the screenplay, because when we've all had this before where, it's they can take a movie and they can, you see it in these so-called reality shows where they'll literally take 10 seconds of film and make 6 minutes of drama out of it, because it's the way they edit it.
Yes.
And
True.
And it's, I mean, what do you focus on? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to promote? So that's why, to borrow an expression, that's why we had 3 entire Star Wars movies that could have been covered in 20 minutes of film, if at all, because we already know that Anakin grows up to be Darth Vader. Who cares? Next. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the next Dune movie.
Yeah, the book is so dense and with all the different characters into it. The Villeneuve did a good job of just focusing everything on Paul Atreides. But unfortunately, it left out my favorite scene in the book, which was the banquet scene after the Atreides had taken over Arrakis, and all the players are coming to have this banquet, and there's some interesting things being said and going on. I mean, I'd have to have the book to look at it, read, remember everything. It's just the political power play, and it's starting to happen in this, and you can figure out who the Atreides can trust and who they can't trust. And one of the rituals Leto abolished, and there was a large fountain of water that everybody would come, and then they would wash their hands, and they would wring the rags out on the ground or throw the rags, wet rags away. And then the Fremen that lived in the city would take them and sell the water from these, wringing up these rags, and Leto said, we're not doing that anymore. And it did actually piss off some of the Fremen because they were making money off that.
Yep.
But he was saying, you know,
Yeah.
this is an oppressive thing that the Harkonnens had done. So, or however they pronounce it. That was an oppressive move, and we're not doing, but we're different kind of leaders. So that was neat. But the banquet, I would have liked to see the banquet in the movie, but it didn't really fit with the pacing. It would have been even a longer. I mean, there were some other scenes in the book that would have been great as well. Jessica and the, huh?
They could have done this, but it would have been even longer.
It would have been longer.
Yeah, no, I get that.
If the story is good, it can be long.
Yeah, I mean, when they tried to kill Paul and what's his name, Thufir was being interrogated by Jessica because he suspected she had something to do with it. In the book, she grills him and makes him realize she didn't have anything to do with it, or that they were trying to make it seem like they suspected her when they didn't, just to throw off the Harkonnens.
Mhm.
Lots of different things that were going on in the book, and of course they couldn't do everything in the movie. But what they did put in there, and the little things they changed, worked well. Like what all the discussions they had outside on Caladan with him and Leto, that didn't take place in the book. When they talked about desert power, that was actually a scene. Once they arrived at Arrakis, they were having a council meeting with the military. And Paul, that was the first time Paul was invited to the military briefings. I believe they had that comment then, or it was afterwards when they were just him and Nita were speaking. But I think pretty much of it was by the book.
Yeah.
Of course, the book kind of.
I mean, you're. I need your guys' opinion. And answer me this, because I'm sort of looked at it. I'm thinking back to the one in '84, and the one in '84 to me, I don't remember a lot of the politics that was brought to me. Again, seemed to be a little bit more forward in the new movie, because when they're discussing, okay, well, the Emperor has sent these guys here to us, that how much did that cost for them to come here and tell us we got to pack up and go over to this other planet?
Yeah.
You know, and why that was.
The Emperor was
Mhm.
afraid of Duke Leto. Duke Leto was a charismatic leader, and he was gaining popularity in the Landsraad. So the Emperor contrived a trap. So he had the fife pulled from the Harkonnens, and they had to leave Arrakis, and then the Atreides were given the fife. And of course, it was all a setup, because the Emperor was going to send a legion of Sardaukar with the Harkonnens to ambush them and just destroy them. And they were going to try to sweep it under the rug. And well, they didn't expect the Kwisatz Haderach to be amongst them.
Nope.
to throw a wrench in the works. But that's the core politics. The Emperor was having
Yeah.
a security complex. And it's like, we can't have, if Leto gets any more popular, he's going to take over, you know, and so let's get rid of him. So, and that wound up biting him.
Yeah.
So,
Which was good, which I hope will be a great scene in the second half of the book. The movie. The ending of Dune, when the final battle. That was the thing too in the book. Herbert kind of glossed over all the fighting scenes, which they showed in the movies.
right. Well, that's,
Because you got to see it in the movie.
yeah, that's the director will always focus on the action.
Yeah. Which is
During
good.
this study, I actually I thought of something. I was thinking about Heinlein and Starship Troopers. Is Dune true science fiction, or is it social commentary with a veil of science fiction over it, like Starship Troopers? Think about that.
It's probably what you said, social commentary. It usually is. But it's over
Well,
a lot of things, ecology and religion
Yes.
and politics.
Yes, that's why it's the best. But,
Yeah, because it just jumps into everything.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the Star Trek. That's the Star Trek formula. You know, we're going to take this social issue and we're going to disguise it
Right.
as science fiction, and
Yeah.
that way
Yes.
we can talk
yes.
about this issue that otherwise we would not be allowed to talk about.
Yes, yes.
And I think that, you know, I mean, even then, I mean, but if you think back, and you know, I remember when, you know, they used to whisper the word toilet paper on TV. You know, now they got bears like shaking their butt to the
Yeah.
you know, the TV, and you know,
The
they used to have
censors gave
the
up.
bra was on, you know, the bra was on a mannequin, you know, and the mannequin
Right.
was like as generic as you could get, and now you've got like, you know, and it just, so, you know, as things change, you can get away with saying a lot more and not having to disguise it so much.
Right.
And I think maybe that may be a problem with a specific genre, Star Trek, where now they feel that they can sacrifice story and storytelling and science fiction to go, here's what we're promoting.
Mhm.
You know,
Too
Which-
much.
which-
What's the word I want to say? Too much reliance on shock, and
Mhm.
you eventually run out of ammunition if you keep trying to be shocking.
Yeah.
You know, you'll go down that slippery slope, and it's like there's no content anymore. It's
Right,
all
we're-
shock value.
We're
and it's-
desensitized.
Mhm.
well,
What are we
that's my
talking-
issue with the word racist.
Yes.
You know, people
Yes.
on social media, you know, that's you disagree with anyone, you're a racist, period. And it's been so overused and so inappropriately applied over the last decade,
Well, you know the
if
thing.
not longer, that it's like, okay, yeah, just, you know, now it's just a checkbox. Okay, they
Well,
called
when
me
I-
an idiot, they called me a racist, they called me, you know,
And when I
there's
read
no
Dune,
shock value left to it. And
and
you
when
know,
I
that's why I don't understand, if I may digress slightly, that's why I don't understand why, in the effort to take down Joe Rogan for having a different opinion, why it's so important to them that, well, we've now dug up this video of him using the N-word. Big deal.
okay.
You know, it's like,
Well, I know when I read Dune for the first time, I saw the Fremen as Arab-looking people.
Mhm.
They
well,
weren't. Even,
desert
they weren't
dwellers,
even.
they
They
be.
weren't. They weren't white in my
The
mind.
Harren. Yeah,
I mean, yeah. Again, it goes, and it goes
Because it
back
wouldn't make
to
sense.
it makes perfect sense.
Now, if it took place
Lawrence
in
of
Scotland,
Arabia, same thing.
yeah. Well, if the story took place in a cold, icy world like Scotland and Norway, and I would expect them to all look white.
If
And
they were
if Paul
Scotland,
Atreides came
pale
from a,
blue.
and if Paul Atreides came from a desert world, then I would expect him to be the brown savior.
Well, yeah,
You know,
but yeah, I mean, yeah, even, you know, Lawrence of Arabia, same thing. Somebody from the outside comes in,
yeah.
makes things better.
Yeah, it's a common trope. It is.
Yeah. But,
Well, the special effects were good, great in this one too. And
There we go.
I was happy to finally see ornithopter that actually looked more like a flying flappy thing. Even though in the book they're more like bird wings, but I can't imagine that even trying to make bird wings in CGI for that level of detail would be rather difficult. So the dragonfly approach worked well.
mhm.
It
It's
it,
nice.
it looked like a helicopter, but it wasn't. You know,
Right.
it was believable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what they
And-
did in '84 with the weird box thing with the,
Oh my goodness!
I don't even
What
know
are you
how
talking
they
about,
flew.
Goodness.
Again, technology. I mean,
I can't remember
they
what they
couldn't do
did
it
in
in 84.
2003 miniseries.
2003 used the ornithopter that's very similar to what you saw in the 2021, because they were using ornithopters like that in the video games as early as it's early 90s.
Yeah.
They were doing Dune video game adaptations for DOS-based operating systems. So they were already doing the flapping. They stuck to the dragonfly because the dragonfly works.
It was also
Even the one that
part-
was drawn by Ron Cobb looks
Yeah.
more like a butterfly. It's not quite a dragonfly. It has more butterfly-like wings.
Yeah,
So I don't think anybody can, it's not practical to make mechanical
No.
flapping wings like a bird.
no,
You
Well,
need
ma-
biomechanoid technology at that
maybe
point.
in 1% gravity, but
Maybe.
but then you got to have a dense atmosphere, so you lose that. So I don't know. It's either way you go.
Yeah.
It's not
You
workable.
you make a good point about special effects. This is a movie that the book inspires your imagination so much that you need a Herculean amount of special effects to make it work.
Yes.
So usually I'm usually very pissy at the special effects carrying the movie, but in
Right.
this
Mhm.
case, you need a spectacle.
And it
I
did
mean, they
not.
really captured the scale, the size of the lighters
Right.
and the size of the vehicles. You really got the scale, and you're looking out at Carthage, at the
Yeah.
city and stuff, and
And
you needed
everything
that.
looks real. It all looked real.
Yes, yes,
So I like it when the CGI is so hidden. It looks. I mean, they did a great job of the realism.
yes.
Well, I've always had an issue with big budget movies that do that. It's what my argument, my complaint has always been they spend $12 on a script and the rest of the budget on CGI, and it becomes absolutely ridiculous that there are. And I'm a big fan. I've said it before. I admit it. I'm a big fan of practical effects.
Mhm.
But there are times when you're not going to do an ornithopter with practical effects. You're not going to do it,
No, it's
but if it's
Hard to
there
tell.
Unless
and
you're
it
gluing
works,
greebles on a dragonfly.
yeah, but I mean, if
Not gonna
it
work.
works and it doesn't overpower the story, then it's a good thing. But that's the problem that I personally see in far too many things, is that it's not. It's too many times in science fiction, the special effects override absolutely everything else, and that's what sucks. And
The Last Starfighter.
yeah, I mean, what?
To
Yeah,
give an example.
yeah, to a large extent, yeah, and it unfortunately, if you're, and again, for me, I love a good story. I don't care, what your special effects are. I don't care, and I always think back to and it's funny because back in the early days of Doctor Who, everything was low budget. I mean, it was like no
Yes.
budget. So I actually recall seeing an episode of Doctor Who where the two opposing sides were shooting each other, and they had these little things, and they were basically they'd redone flashlights, taking the little reflective part in the bulb and the trigger, and they would go up and it would go click, click, click. The light would come on, and somebody would fall over. There was no sound. There was no, there's no bolt coming from one to the other. There's none of that. Just click, 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 and people would be falling down. It's like,
all right.
and it was great because the story was what was important. And I think that when you have something as ambitious as Dune, and what clearly based off of you guys, your description of the books, clearly something that is that well thought out, that good of world building, deserves to have that.
Yeah.
Whereas other franchises, which will remain nameless,
Who knows?
just need to be shot.
Well, here's
They need
my
to be taken out in the middle of an unknown desert and thrown into a giant. If there was some creature that lived in the desert and did nothing but have his mouth open and wait for crap to fall into.
right, of course. Here's my my thought there from sometime in the
Yeah.
90s, early
Yes,
90s.
I remember that drawing.
Yeah.
So I actually did the metal wings there, but
Mm-hmm.
There's
they
just
weren't.
so
Yes.
many components to go wrong
Yeah,
using a
true.
feather-based propulsion system as opposed to an insect model.
That's true.
You still need superior material science, but
Right.
the way the ornithopter articulated in the storm and they were
Yeah.
shearing wings off, and they were going into
Yes.
emergency glide mode. And I was like, oh, that is just beautiful. It was a machine. It was a helicopter, but it was
Right.
a helicopter from a different millennium. So it's
It
interesting.
was incredible
Yeah.
shots they did. It's like all those things existed in reality, and they would just happen to be there. They could use those things to film. That's what I haven't seen anything quite to that extent.
Well, that's when I think that's when the storytelling is good, is when
Yeah.
the gee whiz stuff like that is secondary. You know,
Yeah.
but then you have people that sit around and try to figure out how to do it. How can I make that work? Which is good.
So you probably know my opinion at this point. The 84 film was good. The 2003 miniseries on Sci-Fi left me dissatisfied.
Right. I saw some of that, but I can't really.
Now, one of the problems they
Can't remember much of it.
they had issues because most of the book is in people's heads. You're listening to
Yes, there's a lot
internal
of
dialogue.
Yeah.
That is the biggest challenge. That's more than the special effects. That's the biggest challenge of
His
translating from the book to the moving image.
or omnipotent viewpoint in the book.
But I have to say, Delano did a much better job of making the internal dialogue relevant and useful, or finding alternate ways of
Right.
conveying that.
With the hand signals.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I love that.
I did too. I was like, because I knew what it was from the book, of course, because they had that battle language or whatever it was called.
Yes.
And they're doing it to substitute the internal dialogue.
Right. With the exception of Patrick Stewart, I think all the actors did a far superior job to all previous interpretations, or the 2003 and the 1984. I still think the best Gurney Halleck was Patrick Stewart.
Probably so.
They were brutal. Brutal.
How do you
Yes.
say it?
He's got it.
Brutal. They are brutal.
He just like Patrick Stewart. The guy.
I do.
The guy could read the freaking
Sir
ingredients
Patrick, let's be
off
proper.
of a cereal box. And
You didn't like
you'd
the Man Titan, huh? He didn't snap his fingers and cause shit to happen in Dune. All right.
But even the things they changed that kind of make me scratch my head, like Liet Kynes was Chani's father, and in the movie she was Chani's mother, and
We suppose.
the portrayal was so good that it's like it didn't even matter anymore. I'm still kind of scratching my head on that one, but I
Right.
can't complain because the performance was good. So I do believe that the spirit of the book was captured in the 2021 film
Right.
better than any other adaptation.
But when I read the book, Kynes is the old guy from 1984 movie.
Max von Sydow.
Yeah, that's when I read the book.
Yeah.
That's who I'm seeing. I can't see the woman that did it, but
Yeah.
read the book. Yeah, that's who I'm seeing.
Well, I think that if there's a good reason, and again, that's open to interpretation. What's a good reason? Changing the gender of a character really is irrelevant unless, I don't know, there's some reason why you don't do it just to do it.
Right. Well, I think
no disrespect to Dirk Benedict, but I much prefer the new Battlestar Galactica Starbuck to the old.
I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think what they did was they said, we want to gender swap somebody, so we're going to pick the least impactful character.
Right. Could you imagine if they'd have picked Paul?
Right.
Pauline.
It wouldn't have worked.
We might not be here having this conversation.
No, we wouldn't.
Where do you draw the line when you're doing it? But even my understanding
That's
of
what
it
I mean.
Wasn't there, if I'm not mistaken, again, because I have not read the books, but wasn't there a character in the new movie that is like not in the book at all? They like took different people and like, this is this character in this Dune movie.
I
You
don't
guys are
think
both
so.
looking at me like I'm crazy. Okay, maybe
I don't-
maybe
Yeah,
I'm
I
thinking,
don't-
maybe I'm thinking of the wrong movie because there was something
Spider
that
Pet, maybe, I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
no, it was actually one of the if
There was
again
no
I
new-
could be mistaken,
There was no new
but I thought it was
characters that
one
I
of the
saw.
characters that in Dune that was like it's not in the book, but it's actually like they amalgamated
No, they didn't.
a few of the characters to be this one character and whatever. So I don't know. Okay, maybe I'm
I
wrong.
don't know.
Crap, I don't know.
I don't.
I don't know.
I
That'd be
think
something
so.
else for people to attack me in the comments for.
Nobody's watching this shit. Don't worry about it. No, I don't think they had any different characters from
Yeah, I don't know.
where'd they come from though.
I don't know. And that's the hard part about it is that
Maybe
as I get
maybe he
older,
read something from one of the other interpretations, like the Sci-Fi channel or something, because
Yeah.
Lady Fenrig and Princess Aurelian were combined in the Sci-Fi production.
Oh, really?
Which really pissed me off.
That's
But,
kind of weird,
maybe-
but yeah,
maybe that's
Yeah.
the one that I'm thinking. All I know is that somewhere along the line there was an amalgamation done.
there
and
was
the
a lot
character
of
wasn't in the book.
there was a lot of
and
characters
whatever.
they didn't have in the movie yet.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, we
I'm
haven't
sure
seen
you don't.
Hyder
You
yet.
don't sit there. You don't sit there and take a book that's equivalent. That's been equated to the Bible and go, "We're going to do all the characters." No. You know. Then again, same token.
But like I said, he's focused on Paul Atreides' storyline. So these
Yes.
other storylines are also running parallel
Yes.
to get swept out of the way. They may
Mhm.
they may be more useful in the second half
Yeah.
when you get more into the politics, I suppose, of the Harkonnens and
Hmm.
what they're trying to do. I don't know. Because they had a battle and some characters you just didn't see anymore. So they got a story as well. For those of us that read the book, we know what happens with them.
So is that it?
What a waste! What a waste! Jason Momoa dead. Boom. First movie gone. No.
That's what happened.
Until Dune
I
Messiah.
know. I know.
It was his expression of love for the family,
Mhm.
and it was powerful, and it meant something. And
Well, don't worry.
Yeah.
When Duncan Idaho comes back in Dune Messiah, he's there for the entire rest of the novels. As they stretch thousands of years into the future.
yeah, some really weird stuff happens in the later books.
I swear to God, they do.
You may want to
Oh, I'm
bring some
sure.
psychedelics with you as you read the Children of Dune.
I mean, it gets
And
away.
beyond.
It gets away from Arrakis and goes into some other places.
Yeah.
Different characters.
I don't know what Herbert was smoking, but it was good stuff. But
Yeah.
Well, it was the '60s, right? So.
oh yeah.
He was hanging out with Philip K. Dick, or
Oh, well, there you go.
I don't know. I'm just saying, maybe so.
He's
I don't know
another
for
guy
sure,
we
but
need
it
to discuss,
sounds
but,
great.
Yeah, the end of the movie, it did kind of chop it off right there because there was some more stuff with Jameis that I was hoping to see. I don't know if it's going to be in the second movie. So I'm like, the Scott.
We may just see
spoilers?
them after the fact.
Yeah.
Well, Jameis. Well, wait, it's not a spoiler if you've seen the '84 movie, is it?
I
They
guess
don't
it's
really
not.
say it.
No, it's not.
But you see Jameis's wife and 2 kids standing with Paul. They don't really say it, but I don't know if I call it a spoiler or not.
Probably not. Probably not.
But you remember I talk about the Chronicles of Riddick. You keep what you kill. Well, Jameis's water goes back to the tribe. They dehydrate him, but he gets to keep Jameis's wife and Jameis's 2 sons.
Yes.
And I see biblical parallels there.
There's that.
I refer to the Jameis's sons as the brothers of thunder. So you can look that up in the New Testament.
And
But
there was also this thing about I was a friend of Jameis because he taught me when you take a life, you take your own, or something to that.
oh,
effect.
that's so good.
So
yes.
they kind of mixed that message in with the end of it with Jameis being that spirit guide.
Mhm.
And they would keep
Yes.
referring to him as the friend.
Yes.
But I would like to see the funeral. I hope we get to see the funeral.
Yeah, that
when they're
They might do it. That might be the beginning.
because he's supposed to cry at that time, and then everybody's like he's giving water to the dead.
Giving water to the dead.
So, as it says in the book, moisture conscious, not just water
Mhm.
conscious, but moisture conscious. So
Yeah.
they don't even cry. So
Yeah. Well, that
when they see
again
people-
was,
when they see people cry, it's a big thing.
Mhm.
yeah. That's, and
Yes,
then I think,
Lady
and-
Jessica refers that she's crying and she's basically sinning because she's irreverently crying for something.
Right.
I dug it when the
Great
when the
book.
guy come
Oh, my
up in front of the Atreus and went spits on the table.
Yeah, because
It's like,
even
yeah,
your
no, see, that's
spit's
not an
valuable.
insult. That's you know,
Even your spit is valuable. So when you spit
Yes.
something, you're really giving
Yeah.
something.
yeah. So
Yeah, there's even a plant that they wiped the extract of the plant on their hands so that their hands wouldn't sweat
Right.
because the sweating from the hands was bad. You know, just they were very water centric.
mhm.
It's a crazy. I mean, and that's just
Great story.
That's just great
Great.
world building too.
Yes, which leads into
Yeah.
next week's.
It
Yeah,
could. It could.
absolutely.
You don't have
Yes,
to.
I could.
All right. Anything else? I don't have
Not
anything.
that I can
Well,
think
I just think it was
We'll save it for world building.
it's a fabulous book, or a fabulous series of books until he died, and then those other two characters took over. We won't get into those. Brian Herbert
no
and Kevin
comment.
J. Anderson's foray into the Dune universe, the cartoonization of it, I would call it. But yeah, Herbert's books, excellent. Even though they get kind of wacky and zany, they do kind of make sense in a way. Denis Villeneuve's book, his movie, yeah, top notch
Yes, yes.
in all ways. I don't think I had any complaints about any of it when I saw it. I gotta get
Oh,
I gotta get them.
I had
but
two
yeah.
Dune fans on either side of me when I watched the movie, and there was times when the internal dialogue was being spoken, but not actually on the screen. But I could hear my two friends on either side of me reciting the internal dialogue.
Yeah,
It was very powerful.
you kind of knew it though. So
It was a good movie experience. It really was.
Here comes the Air Force story from Scott.
Well, I'm glad that Scott
Like back during the
watch
Gulf
it
War when we had like 4 movies.
Oh shit!
And one of them
Yeah.
was Hunt for Red October, and we had crew chiefs that were able to speak Russian
Wow.
because they'd seen the movies so many times. They didn't even have to look at the screen. The guy would say it, they'd say what he was saying in English.
That's cool.
And there it is.
But I think my only complaint would have been I would have liked to have been able to see it without any foreknowledge of it from the books. That would have been something unique experience because I'm
Well,
watching it, but I know what's going on because I know more about what's going on in the books, so I understand the scenes a little bit more so than the subtext of
Right.
I know more
Well,
about what's going
I
on
think for me,
than what they can show, or that he showed it well enough for you to understand it as well and
Yeah.
get the movie
well, I definitely got it
That was my
being
problem.
the guy that didn't read the
right.
books. I definitely got it a lot clearer in the new movie as I did in 84. Now,
Yes.
is that because it wasn't presented that way in 84, or is it because my perception of that is, there's a lot of time between 2022 and 1984.
Yeah.
The new movie is a better message. It's a better translation of the book. I think it better captures the spirit of the book. So
Yes.
if the 21 movie made more sense, it was deliberate. Villeneuve, this was obviously a love child. This was a passion project, and it shows. 'Cause he got a lot of things right.
Definitely whoever did this, the people that were involved in it, yeah, they cared about what the hell was going on.
Yeah,
they
everybody
did.
did.
And I can say
Everybody
that not
did, and
having
it
read the
showed.
books, but
Oh,
yeah, it's
there was another thing I wanted to bring up. was something about when we were talking about translations between the book and the movie. The scene with when she's interrogating, or not interrogating, but interviewing the shout out Mapes, when they're talking about the Christ knife, and Mapes wants to know if she knows what it is. In the book, Jessica's internally dialoguing it and thinking it through, and she understands it's from her training and the understanding of the languages that they're using, that the knife, the Christ knife, is the worm's tooth, but it's the maker of death is what she was trying to say. The woman asked her, "Well, do you know what this is?" And she was going to say it's a maker or of death, but she just got maker part out, and that's when Mapes went freaked out on her. She didn't get to finish that sentence. And when I went back and watched that scene, it does look as if Jessica is about to say the whole phrase, but then she gets stopped because this revelation has happened with the Mapes. And I don't know, it's very subtle in the movie.
Yeah.
That because it almost makes it seem like Jessica knows exactly what it is from the perspective of the Fremen, but not quite. I think you can see her mouth up just about to say the maker and so rewatch that scene when you have a chance to watch it. I got to pick it up on Blu-ray because I had read the book again before I saw the movie, so I was a little bit fresh on it.
That I did the same thing. I'm like, it's coming, so I better read it again.
And I think I read it afterwards too. I think I read it a good many months ago, and then after I saw it, I went back and looked back over it. Oh, okay, this is what's going on in that scene. Because they did change some dialogue around. They put certain dialogue in a book from one character. They put it in the mouth of another character in the story to make it just flow better. So I think they did a really good job of translating a novel to visual media.
And it's not an easy novel to translate.
No,
so
it's not.
That's the even bigger triumph.
Not.
Yeah.
It's mostly people thinking in their head.
Yeah.
So it's all internal.
So
and
you
the
had
84 film tried to do it that way, and it didn't work.
Some true Dune fans made this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And acted in it, I think, as well.
Yes.
All right. I think that will conclude this episode. Number 2.
All right.
Season 2.
If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't, give us a thumbs down. You're feeling squirrely, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And as always, remember to tell us how drunk you got in the comments.
Because I am wasted on Diet Coke. I can't even talk straight. All righty. Oh, and now special bonus section of the movie after the credits. The catch up. So you're seeing, Scott, you've been seeing some more Boba Fett?
I have. I watched 2 more episodes. Suffered through them is one of the terms I think I want to use. Yeah. I believe the text that I sent to you was book of Boba Fett or book of boring AF.
Right.
Because it's like, oh dear God, just get to the point.
Here's the point. Did they even have a point?
Well, big time. They're just, they're definitely just like, let's drag this stuff out as long as we can.
Right.
It's another one of those cases where the first episode was 39 minutes. The next one was 52 minutes, and then the third one was back to like 38 minutes or something like that. And it's like, dear God, you could have done all those in a good 1-hour show. Boom, done, get it over with.
Yeah.
No, drag it out.
What can we do?
It out. But it was good to see Stephen Root.
This was a good idea. Thank you.
Money changers. Was that?
Oh, well, the money changers, that was one thing I didn't talk about. When Duke Leto says that you can no longer perform the practice of the dropping of the wet towels on the floor, that was started by the Harkonnens.
Yes.
He also said at the door, if anyone comes to this door, make sure that they get a proper drink of water.
Right.
That immediately reminds me of Jesus casting out the money changers in the courtyard in the temple. It just reminds me of that. Whether it was Herbert's intention or not, but it's the expulsion of the corruption and treating the people in Carthage like human beings,
Right.
and not something's an insect on the ground to lick up my dirty water, So there's a lot of symbolism there. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah.
the
Maybe Boba
other
Fett will
thing-
get better when they bring in Mando. I don't know.
I don't know.
Was that what they were
I don't know.
thinking?
All I know is that he's got to be the freaking person on the planet because he's, it's like, oh, well, I'm sorry, we didn't think you were coming because you didn't do this. Well, I'm not doing that. Well, clearly now that's why they didn't know you were. I don't know, but I did understand your guys's comment about the Power Rangers. That one makes a lot more sense now. And yeah,
Cue the theme music to Power Rangers in the closing credits.
oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know how they're fucking it up as bad as they.
I get the American Graffiti reference. That does actually, when your brother said that does make sense. But
yeah. Well, I think for him, and I don't pretend to speak for him, but I think for him, a lot of the science fiction stuff will do these little homage things to other stuff, and sometimes it's don't get me wrong, I think it's nice to tip your hat every now and again to what came before, but when your entire show is based on nothing but fan service,
It's tiring.
it's like
are you
stop.
guys familiar with the Iron Maiden cover of Somewhere in Time?
Yes.
It's a huge
Yeah.
fold out.
Yeah. Oh, I
It's
didn't
got
see
a
this.
very
I don't think I'm familiar with the fold
Blade
out, but
Runner. It's very Blade Runner-esque.
yeah, it came out.
So
It came out around that time.
there's a bridge on the back cover, and there's a clock there, and the clock is at 23:58, and I was like, 2 minutes to midnight. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
beautiful. Just
Which
but
is
you see,
one of their songs.
that entire piece of art is fan
Mhm.
service, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it has content. There's things going on and relevance to the album. That's
Right.
we often talk about movies and comics, and I'm like,
Right.
let's stop for a moment and look at Iron
I
Maiden's
personally
very
personally
science
think-
fiction album cover.
I personally think if you're going to waste your time filling your show with, filling your science fiction show with nothing but fan service Easter eggs, that every time one is exposed, everybody should do a fourth wall break and maintain eye contact for at least 4 seconds,
Oh my goodness.
and then that way, but
Sarcastically.
I don't know. I go back to some of the stuff that I've seen, shows that you watch when somebody's doing their, okay, this show is out and this, and God help me, every time I do this, I regret it because Frank turns it into a freaking anyway.
You forget
you
a
know,
promise that I made about
it
this
goes
video,
back-
and I'm
Yeah, no,
keeping that promise.
Right, I know you are, and you're doing a good job, even though I'm throwing things out at you. But to me, it's it's the fucking it's the pod racing flags. As
everybody went crazy
that's the
with-
level of animosity I have in this thing, where people will look at something and they were like, oh, they had the pod racer flags. That's important. It's going to be major to the story, and it wound up being, oh yeah,
But the
there's two
story
seconds
sucked.
as they pan past it, like. So you,
Oh,
I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's-
the sequel.
and-
Yeah. Nah,
but I did, hitting back with Boba Fett. I did have to wonder because I'm like, look, man, these sand people are out there. Okay, they're in the desert. There is limited. Yes, okay, I understand. Limited amount of wood, limited amount of metal, limited amount of this, that, and the other. And yet, when somebody dies, they don't scavenge anything off their body. They just throw them on a pile, burn them, and go on. And that to me, as much as an insight of, and maybe you can use some of this for the world building episode, as much as they did a good job of explaining a lot of the things that the sand people did, that one really fell flat on me because
Dave Filoni doesn't understand that they are Fremen. They are George Lucas's version of the Fremen.
Yeah.
Right.
And he doesn't see the correlation. So
Man.
it just they went over his head.
Man, if
Well,
they only
it
had blue
clearly
glowing
did because-
eyes.
yeah, but I mean,
They put some blue lights in those things. That'd be cool.
Well, I mean, but you know, and of course, you know, I don't understand the concept of wrapping someone up in black cloth to walk around in the freaking desert. I'm lost on that one too.
Yeah, it's kind of tormented.
But for me, it's a simple fact that you know, okay, this person is dead. You take everything off of their body, you know, that they're going to use it for.
Well, then you would
you
get to
take
see
those
what they
little-
look like underneath all that crap.
Things that you take the little, you know, whatever that metal and stuff is, you don't throw, you know, the leader got killed and he took his staff, that his status symbol, and threw it in the fire and let it burn. And it's like,
Well,
at that point, I can
they're not-
understand it because everybody was dead. Fine,
they're-
terrific. But
They're not very
when you
smart,
sit there
though.
and again, like I said, I don't think it's good world building when you sit there and make that big of a mistake in what, you know, I mean,
They got to remain a mystery. We don't
You
know
know,
what they're supposed to look like in the
and
movie.
I think the other thing that
I
bothered
think
me,
they're probably so beautiful they would just confuse people and they would just fall to their knees and cry.
yeah, the Medusan's, yeah,
They're
they're
just so
Medusan's. They're
beautiful. Nobody
they'll
can
go insane.
behold their beauty without having a.
Yeah.
their-
Oh, am I gonna have fun in the comments section?
But their
Anyway,
brain-
But
Because you would
Well,
think,
I mean,
oh,
but-
they
but
must be
still,
ugly as sin because they're all up under all that stuff. But they got plenty of ugly aliens in Star Wars.
right.
I'm gonna say
Well,
this
still-
because
still the-
it's related to Dune. Kevin J. Anderson answers all of your questions, and he understands that they're Fremen.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Well,
again,
he wrote some doom stories. So
you know,
obviously we'll know.
desert people stop a freaking train and they bust open a valve and water starts pouring out everywhere, and nobody's really freaking out.
Well, they got water moisturizers. Oh, moisturizers.
Evaporators.
Evaporators. It's a water moisturizer. It takes water and it makes it
The
even
water
better.
moisturizes the water.
There were evaporators in Carthage in the book, if you remember, and they were specifically called evaporators.
Oh, man, I don't know.
Well,
Carthage equals.
Yeah, we know.
I told you I wasn't going to talk
Carthage
about
Abbey, Dracula's in this shit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Again, it all, you know, Book of Boba Fett. I think they're doing a decent job of trying to build that world, but they're not. They're missing obvious stuff. You know, you just
I don't know if they even try, but
well, again, you know, I go back to, you got these desert dwellers and they're wasting resources. You know, and I will
They-
say this. I
guess
will
they-
say this, and it is odd, and I think I'll give a chance to self-edit myself or to correct myself. I have to say, from having lived there, if I had to say there was one country on this entire planet that was complete and absolute most wasteful of water in the frickin' planet, it would be the Middle East.
Really?
Yes. You will see these guys out there at frickin' noon, high frickin' noon, 140 fucking degrees. And what are they doing? Watering the plants. Now this shit's going to be evaporated in like 30 seconds. It's
Yeah.
going to be gone. But you're out there dumping water, and it's it's like, okay, whatever. But
Well,
it's just it's
I don't know.
I don't know.
Is Tatooine supposed to be a hot planet?
well, that's 2 suns, and everything's desert.
Well, it can be arid, but still not be hot. I mean,
No, yeah, very true. I
you
mean,
don't you don't know.
Western Saudi Arabia is actually kind of nice. Khamis Mashat is actually higher in elevation than Denver,
Yeah, I'm just wondering
so it's actually kind of pleasant.
because it's supposed to be hot on Arrakis.
Well, it's definitely not hot on Hoth. We know that for sure.
Yeah.
But
So,
You
yeah,
guys are really torturing me.
I don't know. I just don't know if Tatooine is a hot planet. I know it seems like it's a mild or moderately warm. I don't think
Okay, over there.
maybe it doesn't get up to 120 degrees, but maybe in some places it does. I don't know. They just
well,
don't,
I
they don't seem
again,
to be
my
like,
argument on that would be they've got 2 suns and everything's a fucking desert. I mean,
well, I think it can still be far enough away where it's not. I don't know.
It is
the
Iraq.
show's over, Frank. What are you looking at me like that for?
I don't know.
Oh shit, he's still recording.
Yeah, he's still recording.
Yeah, it's the after show.
Damn it.
I mean,
This is the bonus material.
Damn it.
it'd be a second.
It is the analog for Arrakis. It
Yeah.
is. And I would even go back to Flash Gordon, The Deserts of Mongol, and Barsoom in Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars, inspired a lot of people, including George Lucas and Frank Herbert.
Right.
Lawrence of Arabia.
We got Mars to blame for everything, folks. Mars is the problem.
Mars is the red planet, and Arrakis
It is.
is the red planet. He just made the spice the color instead of the iron oxide that we found there. But
That'd be a good idea for a sci-fi movie. Mars, the red planet by the Chinese.
So let me get this straight.
The communist
The Fremen are actually the Arabs. The spice is actually oil. You're
yes,
trying to tell me that oil comes from a bunch of freaking worms? Are you out of your damn mind?
yes.
What the worms
no,
eat? They eat sand.
Well, see, okay, now I have a question because
Earthworms
you
eat
guys.
soil.
We don't know what the worms eat, Scott. Nobody hasn't. I don't even know if he's ever mentioned what the worms eat. They just there and they'll eat lots of sand and sand crawlers
Okay.
and people.
Actually, sand trap.
Here's my question.
Sand
It's
trap.
explained in the third book.
Yeah, there's a
Spice is important.
actual fire in the belly of that beast. I
Spice.
believe.
Spice is important, right?
Yes.
It gets you
Okay.
high and you can navigate space with it.
Spice comes from the worms.
True.
The worms live in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Atreus is there to make the planet green.
Yes.
The only way to make the planet green is to introduce water, which is
Right.
poisonous to the worms,
Yes.
Correct.
which means they would have no more spice. Wouldn't you think there would be armies trying to keep these guys from burning the place green?
Read the subsequent books.
Yes. Yeah,
There's a whole lot more to it, but you're definitely beating down.
Yeah, they
You're beating down the right path.
you are. Yeah, they set aside an area of Arrakis just for the worm.
So
That was nice of them.
Yeah, they did that. And then later they try to introduce worms to other planets.
Oh no, I think the fun part was never mind. Sorry. Oh,
well,
dear
they
God.
realized that Shai Hulud was not original or indigenous of Arrakis, and that begins the investigation. They were like, "Well, where did these things come from?"
And then they found this spaceship and it has this fossilized jockey. And there's these little football worms, football eggs. And they get on your face.
I'll get
And
a
it
little
puts the thing
deeper
in your
into that
belly?
on world building because I would ask in the world building episode, what was the first planet to achieve space holding? Where did that actually begin? But I don't know if that's
Well,
I don't know if that's been
yeah,
satisfactorily addressed, but anyway.
well, what's satisfactorily addressed? Satisfactory for the story or satisfactory for the reader? You know, my thing is like when I read, even though I personally, on a personal level, try to figure out when I'm reading Paul's stuff and he's talking about the weave, I just accept the way that it operates as a reader. But as somebody that's a little bit of a science geek, I start to try to figure out, well, how would this work? How could you do this and still make it this? And the funny thing is
I don't know.
You know, well, no, the beauty part for me is that as you read it, you actually pick up on a lot of how it works,
Right.
just basically based off of what he's writing.
Right.
You know, he's
right.
talking to this guy's talking about some chick, and it's like, oh, yep, there's the ping alert. There's, you know, he's wanting to send me a file. So he's wanting to send me a picture of this chick, you know, whatever. And it works, but it's
nanotech.
I just the concept
nanotech.
of the weave is interesting to me.
This is nanotech. That's all it is.
On a scientific level, it's interesting to me because it's like, okay,
like,
cool.
You know,
and the weave can do these things, you know, to an extent. It can, you know, and it's like, hey, that's, you know, it makes sense in science and it makes sense in the stories.
Just a little bit of
I was actually listening to an interview with Bill Slavicsek, who's influential in the role-playing game, the D6 role-playing game. See what I did there?
Yeah.
And he made the point when talking to Lucas, he said, we can't just use the elements that you have in your movies. That's not enough. We have to create, we have to expand things because players are going to ask questions and players are going to want to go to different places. And why does that work that way? And players will always create, in role-playing games, players will always create situations where they ask hard questions. And so people like me need hard answers or need to be prepared to figure it out while I'm sitting there. Yeah. So,
but see, here's the thing. I mean, if the world building wasn't good to begin with, then all you're doing as a game master, don't take this personally, Frank, all you're doing is doing the work that this guy was too lazy to do.
True. He knows it.
You know, and is there a reward for that? No. Is there a prize for that?
There is a reward.
Is there a job waiting with a big fat 7-digit paycheck? No. You know, so,
but
you know,
when you have a group of players who say to you, when's the next game? That's my reward.
That's your reward. Yeah.
That's my reward because they're like,
and I do get that. I do understand that. It's awesome.
And you're right. I mean, I have to know a lot about the technology that I'm trying to create and how it operates, and then show that instead of explain it.
Yes. We could do another episode on good storytelling.
I mean, it's what it's my my microwave oven analogy. When people write contemporary stories and they talk about somebody using a microwave oven, you know, they just open the door, put a plate in there, hit some buttons, and it cooks. That's right. But you don't know how the fucking microwave is working. I mean, some of us do. We know it's it's.
Yeah,
we know how it operates, but if you're writing a story, you're not going to say this magnetron was emitting these radio waves in a certain frequency range, and it would excite the water molecules and generate heat.
I always found it funny as an ECM troop.
Huh?
I always found it funny as an ECM troop when a cop would try to explain radar to me.
Yeah,
like, really? That's fascinating.
I know all about it. And I have no idea how these LED TVs work. I don't.
Your radar gun is a toy, officer.
Yeah.
Compared to the units in the nose cone of a F-15, that's a toy. That's a hair dryer.
So that's what you get. The writer's got to know how it works.
Yes.
Got to know how to.
But
show it.
Even if it's some kind of technology, it's like it's like with, if you will, the transporter. We understand the basic concept. It moves somebody from here to there, no ship involved. Well, how does it do it?
Right.
Because the Heisenberg theory said, theory, blah, blah, blah. Well, it has a Heisenberg compensator. Well, how does that work? Well, apparently it works really well.
Yeah,
It's
true.
And
The matter transporter
on the one hand, it's great.
disintegrates you.
That's your fantasy conceit.
Yeah, right. And on the one hand, it's great that the idea works. And on the other hand, it, maybe somewhere there's some idiot like me sitting around going, wait a minute, now how would this work? If we did this, it might work. Or if it did this, it might, I mean, we may, I'm not saying that our technology would ever get to the point where, we would have something like the transporter, but the transporter, in a great world, we would have transporters and they might operate on an entirely different way than what they were in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I
I
think
say
it
that we'll
would
never
have
come up
been-
with transporters because it's 2022. We were supposed to have freaking flying cars all the way
Right.
back in 2000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Why we
I
don't
think
have
if Star Trek were just a little bit more hard science fiction, you would have to have a transporter pad where you were transporting down to.
Yes.
That
Yes.
would make a lot more sense.
well, I think it goes back
It's
to
almost like making a phone call, but the other guy doesn't have a phone, but he's
Right.
still
Right.
picking up your message. It's in the
well,
thin
see,
air.
that was my argument. That was my argument with Stargate, because for them to dial somewhere, they had to know where they were dialing from.
Right.
Yes.
Which is irrelevant because they're using, it's like me picking up a phone call and going, well, I can't call Paul because I don't know where I'm at. I don't have to know where I'm at. I call Paul. Paul, where the hell am I? You're at the bar again, you dumbass. Crap. But that was my one. I mean, that was, if I had to gig Stargate on world building, that would be it, because that technology is great, because you've got to dial in, you've got to lock in these different coordinates to get to this other Stargate.
Right. Because there's a
Terrific.
network.
And you
But
have
you
the plot
don't
device
have to
that if the
know.
gate is broken, you're stuck
Yeah.
on this planet light years away.
Well, you're not, but it's not that it's broken, but it's like, if there's something blocking the other gate, you're not going through it.
That too.
Okay.
like a
but
big
and that's
stone
fine.
wall.
But still, it's all irrelevant to the concept that they couldn't dial home because they didn't know what the symbol was for the planet they were on. That's the weakest part of that. I mean, I appreciated that they did the
Wouldn't it already be locked
the-
into the planet there?
no, it was missing. They didn't know what it was because the one that said what it was missing, and that's the last one they had to do. That
Was this from
and
the,
it's like,
the movie or from the show? Because I can't really remember.
oh, the show probably changed it from the movie. I'm
No,
talking about-
it's about the same. It's about
yeah,
the same.
but it was always, you have to know where you're dialing from, and I'm going, no, it's a phone. You don't have to know where you're
You
at
should- yeah.
to
They
dial to something.
They wanted to make it more complicated.
Well, it
mean-
was I think
Hey, it is
I think it was a
it is
plot hole.
interstellar teleportation. So
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, that's the argument for time travel. You build a time machine and you want to go back to, last Tuesday. Well, it's not just, you have to figure out where the Earth was, where the room
Yeah.
that you're trying to time travel to
Yeah.
was, and all these other things, all these other calculations.
and don't disrupt
Otherwise,
anything
you're-
you did on departure.
Well, I mean, it's
I don't know how
there
you
was an
feel.
old story that I read one time about time travel, and the guy was explaining it to him. He's like, it's like traveling down a highway. He goes, you can travel one direction, but when you're on your return trip, you have to take a different route. And they were like, why? And it was like, well, the reason is because if you don't, you're going to literally run into yourself. And sure as hell, when they were traveling, they were like, hell, there's another ship coming at us, and that ship's completely destroyed, which damages their ship. And they wind up, and it's like, we got to figure out a way to get out of here. And big surprise, the guy that can figure it out is dead. So they go, well, we'll just follow the exact path back.
And that's what caused.
And as they follow the exact same path back, they run into themselves, literally, and then they're killed in this accident.
Yeah, that's
It's old
I
Twilight
for- I
Zone.
f- Yeah, but
think.
it's also in I saw the same situation or same problem
Yeah.
proposed in a book on was it Kip Thorpe's it was one of Kip Thorpe's books on wormholes and black holes and whatnot, where
Mm,
you have a pool table
yeah.
and a ball goes into a wormhole and comes out of the wormhole and hits itself, causing it to go into the wormhole and back around,
Mhm.
hits itself. It's that kind of paradox loop.
Yeah.
It's got some name
Well,
to
it,
it.
it
And
yeah,
I even had
similar
it,
to-
and I read that, and then I thought, well, that gave me an idea for a sci-fi story too, which is exactly about what you just proposed, where
Mhm. Yeah.
these guys are out flying through space and in a spaceship that's big and round like a cue ball.
And suddenly a giant stick and a green hand
No,
comes out of
no.
nowhere.
They're doing something, they get hit by another ship, and it's them going through a wormhole loop.
Yeah.
That's just causing this.
Well, and yeah,
So it's something
yeah.
that's been out there for a while.
Well, it's sort of like the paradox that was created in an episode of Star Trek Next Generation where Kelsey Grammer was the captain of
Yeah.
another ship,
Yeah.
and they were doing
story.
this time loop where they keep running into the ship and literally running into the ship,
Right.
and everything blows up, and it's like, well, when did that start?
We don't even know. Millions of years ago.
Like, but
Time travel's a troublemaker.
It
I've
is.
said it before.
yeah, well,
And something
You know.
was brought up too, I think from a physics YouTuber that says something about how do you travel back in time while you yourself are aging. So you are traveling forward in time while you're also going back in time. So how do you figure that out?
well, I think.
I mean, it's, you know, that's one of the other throwing the wrench.
The
in
first
the
thing we
system.
shoot back in time will be an atomic clock, and we'll work from there.
Well, I think I mean my interpretation of that would be is yes, there's I continue to age, and that was a question that was actually brought up in the old television show 7 Days, because the guy was like, I'm aging at 7 times what everybody else is, because he's at this point, and then he moves back 7 days and relives those 7 days.
Right.
So by the time the system sets the reset, and otherwise he's caught in a loop, which was also one of their storylines. But so he's every time he does a back step, he's continuing to age. So
Yeah.
at some point he's going to be
But
a very,
should
very
he?
old man.
If you go back in time, and maybe you age backwards, which would suck.
I don't think
for
so.
you.
I think I think the conservation
You'd have to have a spaceship that was somehow shielded from time.
Yes.
well, I think the ship itself and that creates the field that allows you to time travel would protect you in the ship, because otherwise what happens is you sit there and you go, okay, we created this ship 18 years ago, and we're going to travel back 150 years, and you travel back 18 years and suddenly you're dead in space because, well, the ship wasn't built yet. That's not a I don't
That
think it
falls
works
under
that
the
way.
disruption of your departure. But anyway.
Well, but
Don't time
it's
travel.
again, I mean, it's one of those things where I think but what you do is when you travel forward, you are still going to continue. I mean, you're continually aging all the time anyway. But I have time travel is one of the things that's like, oh yeah, 10,000 theories on that one.
Yeah.
And again, the downside to it is all of them lead toward how do we do it? How will we make it happen?
Well, they did the atomic clock experiment, and they sent an aircraft flying opposite to the rotation of the Earth. They sent one flying in the direction of the rotation of the Earth, and they kept one clock stationary. And when the clocks got all back together, they found that the plane flying counterclockwise to the planet had slowed down, and the one that was flying clockwise to the planet sped up. by
Yeah.
billions of a second.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Relativity.
so we have successfully time traveled.
Yeah, you always
Yeah,
turn
well, I
into
mean,
the
yeah, I
future.
successfully time travel every night. I lay
But-
down, I go to sleep, I wake up X number of hours later.
It's always,
you
always
know.
into the future.
You know, now for me,
At
it
different
actually takes
rates.
the
Yeah,
8
It's
hours.
always into the future.
Well,
There's
it's,
some-
I think, I think that that argument
Clock skip.
is two-sided. One, for the past to have turned out the way it did, you had to be there doing what you were doing. So basically, there is no butterfly effect.
Right.
You know.
That's the safest
Second,
option.
you can't travel forward in time because decisions have to be made to determine what your future is, and those decisions haven't been made yet. So therefore, that future doesn't exist.
Yep.
If that makes sense, but
You can't go back in time with a spreadsheet you've been working on for 13 years, because then where did that knowledge come from in the first place?
you know, you travel back in time and you give, Edgar Allan Poe a collection of his collected works, stuff that he
Exactly.
hasn't written yet.
Same thing.
Well, you travel back to your time and then there they are. So who wrote them? Really?
Yes, who is the original
you
writer?
gave them to him.
There's a paradox there somewhere.
Maybe he didn't. What if he
Right.
didn't like them? This is trash.
know.
He wrote something different.
I did read a cool short story one time.
Then your novel's
It
going to
was,
be something completely different. You're like, what the hell is this?
It was a
But
real,
then you
it was a
can't
really
remember
cool story
what they used to
about
be.
time travel. And it's like in some aspects, time travel it happens, and they realize it's not really time travel. You're more dimension hopping.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own, each dimension has its own, if you will, resonance frequency. And this guy, so therefore the only people that have it are the authorities, because you can't be hopping from one. And this guy winds up killing a cop, gets his little time travel device or his dimension travel device. And he knows he's only got a certain amount of time in each place before they catch up with him. So he's like, I got to go here, look, blah, 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 here. And he finally winds up in a place where he finds something, and they don't really say what it is, but it's something they make the comment that it is really something simple, like a paper clip or some innocuous thing that doesn't exist in his world. So when he goes back to his world, he's going to be famous because he's going to invent it. And he wants to make sure that he's not caught. So he gets back to his world, goes, okay, my world. And he sets this device to hop forward or to hop to another place, hop to another place, hop to another place, and then stop. And he goes, and they won't know where I got off this train, blah, blah, blah. So he goes in and he's like, he's on his way to his house. And he's like, man, I just got a killer headache. He stops in and he buys a bottle of aspirin. And while he's standing there waiting for the checkout counter, he's looking through the list. He looked at that little book rack there that they've got with books for sale. And it's like, and he comes across a book, Edgar Allan Poe Love Stories. Or, and it's like, of course, at that point, he knows he's in the wrong place, and it's only a matter of time before they go, yeah, you're not supposed to be here. And, but I thought that was kind of cool because it didn't deal necessarily with the time travel thing. It dealt with, dimensional travel.
Yeah.
But
I was happy.
Oh, he was, that was kind of the end of the story. But that he even said in the story that it wasn't going to be long before they found him because he didn't belong there.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's sort of like the old Sliders television show.
Yeah, that was pretty
He
good.
wasn't,
Yeah,
he didn't
Sliders was
really,
like that.
he was actually trying to invent
Love
time
that.
travel and wound up inventing dimensional travel.
Yeah. That was a good show.
Yeah, I like that show. Got a little weird there at the end, but yeah.
I like the episode where they go to their mother's house and they expect the gate to squeak and it doesn't squeak. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, we're not in the right dimension.
Yep, we're not in the right place.
Handyman comes out, he had just oiled the fence.
He had fixed it.
And,
Yeah.
So they could have been.
Yep, they could have been home.
I don't know if any of you guys watch Rick and Morty. It's actually very similar to Sliders in that regard. They're constantly dimension hopping,
Right, I've seen them.
and some of them are really off the wall.
I've seen them. Me and Nathan watched them.
Okay,
I actually
that
haven't.
makes sense.
They're very bizarre.
Yes, they are. Oh,
All right.